Why am I getting constant good luck where even the things that most people would think are bad luck for me are gems from the universe? You know, essentially a streak of shite on a lens that I put under my magnoscope and then stack it on top of all the other subhuman pieces of fucking garbage needing shot. However, although they do need shot, these motherfuckers are first in line, right? And these motherfuckers helped me see more of what these pieces of shit are since the days of St. Old Les. So, I'm in front of two filthy pigs, right? And I have to make that decision. And so I decide to keep her embroiled in that. And I'm going to see if I can get my day in court. And what happens next is I go up the road and in the last one I've told you about me phoning a month earlier to tell the filth, look, I think she's been in my fucking house and she keeps sending me things implying she's going to kill somebody if I don't go back there. But these pieces of shit, and they're all female, unsurprisingly, who are voluminously bombastic, hate-consumed garbage, who get off on shrieking. They are sex offenders who get off on shrieking. Male sex offenders get off on shouting as well. They're imbeciles. And what I'm pointing out to you is, she said on the phone, well, wait till she kills someone else, then we'll arrest her, sir. So that's wisher biggery for you. So my concerns for the next person not having my self-confidence, not having my irreductible fucking, self-respect, and me seeing her on UK 420 grooming a guy just out of hospital, telling him, she's the most selfish cunt I've ever met in my fucking life, the most selfish person I've ever met in my entire life. And she's telling him she wants to come down and help him with weeping sores he has on his arse. Think about that. The most selfish person on earth, trying to endear herself to someone just out of hospital, and me knowing that she's a psychotic, cold, calculating bully who wants to try and get control of a person's mind, rob them of their cash, leave them with PTSD, and they're already in a vulnerable position. She hopes they feel emotions for her, and then they kill themselves when they can't have her back. She keeps doing push me, pull you, right? And it doesn't work on me. And so I went right up in her estimation. She was impressed by this and thought, maybe I'm the one for her. However, she sees herself as a homosexual boy in a female body. And sometimes she sees herself as Adele, right? Fat bird. And what I'm saying is, with ginger hair. And she's the most female, primitive female, really. She's the original female, really. And it goes to show you how many surviving rejections there are, how many walking abortions there are in that era way back then, where the fetus could fight in the womb. And she's been fighting ever since. And I felt some sympathy for her because I saw her life story and I could move her quite easily at times. For example, she was driving like fuck down the road, and this car she said she'd bought with the money I gave her out of kindness, as a treat. I was trying to inspire her, and I said to her that I'd got this kind of vibe from a grave she'd pretended her friend was died and buried in. She was talking shite, and she was talking about another girl she gave me the impression she'd killed, who was buried over there, but she was talking shite again, although I think that girl trumped her. And the point being, she went to her grave, and she's been buried. But the point is, there we are in this graveyard, right? And I got the impression that I got a sense of something, and I was coming to funny one-liners, as though this sense was saying to me, just rip the pish, don't take her seriously at all. And I didn't take her seriously, and she started smirking and laughing. And she'd been telling me she was thinking about suicide, which I do believe, but it was also part of her ploy. So it's like two parallels simultaneously. She genuinely wants a relationship with you, but she's hedged her bets. And this is her life experience. In a nutcake, anyway, we were driving away from that church where there was a few comical moments. I put in other videos about it and so on and so forth. And I turned to her and I said, you know, she imbecilically said her father had hung himself in that woods over there, and she'd said at other time he'd gassed himself. And I got a reading from her, one of her tells, that he'd drowned himself. However, somebody drowned himself. So I told her about a guy I knew, rest his soul, called Tony Quinn, and he was treated rather shabbily, and he was quite deaf, and so he drowned himself and left his clothes very neatly piled by the side of Strathclyde Park. I really liked the guy, and I was always nice to him. I always stood up for him. And a teacher, a skunk cunt called Duffy, a psychopath, put pepper in his drink and made him drink it in front of me. You know, evil cunt, because he was always playing tricks and being fun and all that kind of thing. And I liked it. You know. Homeschooling. Community schooling, not fucking government funded schooling. I'll come to it. So, right? You ready? I said to her, when she was talking about these woods over here and we're flying down the road, I said, it's as though I'm getting a message, fun enough, from that direction, you know. And I wasn't going to say it, and I'm going to say it anyway. And I said to her, I'm genuinely really sorry for what happened to you. I know I'm not to blame for it, but I'm saying I'm really sorry about everything you went through as a child. You know, like, it must have been harrowing for you, you know, and I can understand how it adversely affects you, you know. And I think it's important to tell you that, you know, I'm genuinely really sorry that you went through all that, you know. And she started to cry. So she does have a heart, right? The phrase, a tart with a heart, but a tart nonetheless, resonated with her hugely. She laughed at that. It was one of my mother's old phrases. And other phrases were rotten to the core, and that resonated with her. And I could go on, but the point being, I allowed myself to be arrested to keep her from killing these people. And I'd already phoned a month earlier to try and stop her from killing any more people. I didn't want her to be arrested. I didn't think she would be. I think she would just be like, maybe tagged or something, I don't know. You know, and I know that the majority of people, genuinely, 160% of the 200%, 160% should be executed, should be fucking culled. And I'm almost grateful to the Zionist filth for soliciting that to emerge from the shite I used to treat with such Christ-like compassion and kindness, who just saw kindness as being a weakness, you know. And as I've said in the last one, I'm kind of grateful to McCallum for the help she gave me when she thought I was under her spell, you know. And I'm studying her and thinking, this kind of long goodbye that I used to do, you know, because I'm a sentimentality and I wanted to end in their favour because I didn't think they were good enough for me, you know. And so morally I have to end it in their favour, and I told her that, and she knew that. And so yeah, so she thinks correctly, 160% out of 200%, well, fuck them, you know, like if they die and kill themselves, fuck them, because they're pieces of shit. And she's right. You know, 90% of females and 70% of males should be fucking drowned and burned. Your ancestors would have fucking drowned and burned, they cunts. Yeah? But these spastic cunts fucking promote them and put them in your life, and then groom them to be even more narcissistic to ensure they're culling. One way or a fucking other, you're gone. So I turn my focus exclusively to humans alone, and fuck everybody else, you know what I mean? However, I, in all conscience, can't take the risk of her focusing on who she tends to focus on, innocent human beings. She doesn't target, she doesn't lay the blame where it belongs. Yeah? So, she targets the vulnerable, the sick, the needy, the dying, the people who she thinks have got clinical depression. You think she would have some empathy with those people, at least some kind of thing in common with them. You know, like both being Celtic fans, it meant fuck all to her. That's why I stopped watching Celtic. She was the 8th Celtic fan in a row who targeted me, who's rotten to the fucking core, and there's no such thing as a Celtic family. I'll cover that in Erol and Tim's. And the thing is, I just couldn't bring myself to watch that shit anymore. You know, my late grandfather put his shovel in the ground and helped build the very first Celtic park. Fuck all you old niggers. Yeah. So, the point is this. Incidentally, poetic justice is happening again and again to all the people who pretend to support Celtic and yet don't give a fuck about a man whose grandfather helped build the first Celtic ground, a man who has supported Celtic financially for fucking years, watched every game, knew it inside fucking out, blah blah blah. You don't give a fuck. It's as long as you're doing the bouncy, you know, or whatever it's called, the fucking, as long as Guinness music is playing in the hollow between your fucking ears, you know, you're doing the huddle. So, I'm pointing out, we had these things in common and I thought they were significant. It's just like beggared belief. Both being Celtic fans, that meant fuck all to her. Both being into marijuana meant fuck all to her. In fact, I'd been kind to her when I first met her and let her pay me with a branch of marijuana, which was inspirational. This is what I was wanting to repay, because I went on to grow thousands and thousands of pounds worth of marijuana to give it a fascist token number to gauge it by. And all these things, you know, and the fact I'd given this greedy lunatic hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pounds to try and help her with the hardship I'd seen in her. I see into people. I told her, I see them like having their first day at primary school and just see what a mess they've made of themselves since then. You know, people would see me go, he looks the exact same as when he was 4.5, you know, and the thing is, so I could move her quite easily, and I'll give you an example. In person, right, because of me being non-reactionary, she eventually said to me, I'm lost, because she had sickened herself. There was no sexual buzz from saying shit that doesn't work on me, didn't work on me when I was 4.5. My love of truth, morality, conscience, compassion, depth, sentimentality, all these things were some enormously beyond her, especially morality. Me walking about going, I can pick up the moral law of the universe, and she was infuriated by that. However, the point being, she admitted that she was lost, and she felt about that big, she later said, and that she had no moral conscience, essentially, and that everything she'd done was a deliberate choice, and she wanted a clean slate, essentially, to start again. This is why I'm saying, my conclusion is, yeah, she did. But what I said to her is, look, she asked me how she can change, how she can go about these things, and I said, look, humour is the key, yeah, humour, right? And I said, you don't have to react the way somebody wants you to choose to react. Be emotionally independent. And I gave her an example. You know, I'd been targeted by a female killer before her, called Kay Milton, so she called herself anyway. And I always riffed after her surname. And I'd diagnosed her as being bipolar. That's as much as I could comprehend at the time, really, see insightfully. But she was a paranoid schizophrenic psychopath, and I didn't know. You would call her maybe a sociopath, but she had temporal lobe dysfunction, so she was going about doing really bad things with people, pretending they were doing it to her. But I think she had an ankle tag on, and she was being kept in her mum and dad's attic bedroom, who weren't brilliant, really. They were nice people, but too nice, which is a sad thing to say with that kind of animal. And by studying her, whom I'll expose on, maybe call it Cain David, because I studied a guy called David before. I was very kind to both of them, and studying her helped me for McCallum, really, because it was like having McCallum on the other side of a screen. And I suppose one of her techniques in Erol and Killing. It was amazing, really. Fuck me, man. It's amazing. And she copped for being bipolar, at least when I was putting it to her, and McCallum copped for it as well. And she tried to factor that into her pathological lying. And so I, in the interim period between these two wonderful lunatics, basically found this poem, and I read it to McCallum. Well, see for yourself. I don't know anything about this particular female poet. From it, I gather that she's a paranoid schizophrenic psychopath. And I'll go over it. It's called The Moon and the Yew Tree. This is the light of the mind. Cold and planetary. The trees of the mind are black. The light is blue. The grasses unload their griefs at my feet as if I were God, prickling my ankles and murmuring of their humility. Fumy, spiritous mists inhabit this place. Separated from my house by a row of headstones, I simply cannot see where there is to get to. The moon is no door. It is a face in its own right, white as a knuckle, and terribly upset. It drags the sea after it like a dark crime. It is quiet, with the o-gape of complete despair. I live here. Twice on Sunday, the bells startle the sky. 8 great tongues affirming the resurrection. At the end, they soberly bong out their names. The yew tree points up. It has a Gothic shape. The eyes lift after it and find the moon. The moon is my mother. She's not sweet like Mary. Her blue garments unloose small bats and owls. How I would like to believe in tenderness. The face of the effigy, gentled by candles, bending on me in particular, its mild eyes. I have fallen a long way. Clouds are flowering, blue and mystical over the face of the stars. Inside the church, the saints will all be blue. Floating on their delicate feet above the cold pews. Their hands and faces stiff with holiness. The moon sees nothing of this. She's bald and wild. And the message of the yew tree, the message of the yew tree is blackness. Blackness and silence. And I turned to her and she was crying her eyes out. She's a tart with a heart. Makes it worse. So, I said to her, emotional independence, you're supposed to be laughing. You promised you would laugh at the end of all that. You don't have to choose to feel anything that anybody wants you to feel. You know, if you break down that whole thing from top to bottom very, very quickly, this is the light of the mind, right? She's telling you what her mind is like, cold and planetary. Everything's just an object. She has no object constancy. She doesn't see articulately. Everything's just cold objects. The trees of the mind are black, right? That's her pathology. She's a dark, clinically depressed person. Even the light, at least she gives a little, is blue. You know, the grasses she's talking about are the people she's in the town with. In today's culture, by these Zionist scumbags, this girl's wild, right? She wants to be wild. So these people at least are keeping her where she should be, you know, in a kind of no woman's land, but nonetheless not in the wildness these Zionist subhuman fucking pieces of garbage want females to be destroyed by, reliably, and their children too. She refers to the people the hypocrites, mainly, that she shares a town with, as the grasses, right? And she projects them as, you know, unloading their griefs at her feet as if, you know, she were God, prickling her ankles and murmuring of their humility, right? And she towers over them in her mind because to her they're just little tiny insects, right? And Fumy spiritus mists inhabiting the place, right? So you see a kind of like dreamy world that paranoid schizophrenics have due to the exposed wiring. Separated from a house by a row of headstones. You know, this kind of like, as Socrates said, like looking at ourselves through a glass darkly. I simply cannot see what there is to get to the meaninglessness of having no frontal function. The moon is no door, it's a face in its own right, so there's no escape, but she recognises, projects herself onto the moon. She projects what she wants onto the moon. White as a knuckle and terribly upset, that's how she feels, tense and angry, and she projects it onto the moon. It drags the sea after it like a dark crime, right? This is what I mean about having no moral conscience, right? You know, she doesn't want consequence for her actions from these little grass creatures, but she does know she drags a whole fucking sea of dark crime behind her. And then she just said, "Is this quiet?" You know, where she is at this moment in time, it's the best place to keep them in a stress-free environment. With the O gape of complete despair, right? You now see what's inside her, like the silent scream. And then she says, "I live here." You know, she is isolated as fuck, and she's seeing herself as being no different to the moon in many ways. Then, twice on Sunday, the bells startle the sky, right? So, basically, at least something's happened, you know. And like, she's snapped out of her kind of delusional reverie. 8 great tongues affirming the resurrection, they're just bells. And she's trying to say nah nihilistically, because of this lack of function and meaning. You know, it's all bullshit. You know. At the end, they soberly bong out their names territorially. The yew tree points up as a Gothic shape. Now, this yew tree I see as being herself, right? Now, you could see it as being a father figure. I see it as being herself, right? And it'll make more sense in a minute, right? The eyes lift after it and find the moon. So she's looking to her mother, right? And the moon is my mother, right? She's not sweet like Mary, so I believe her mother's oppressive as fuck and telling her, "Why are you not like the other girls?" And she sees other girls who've been hypocrites, you know. And she knows herself not to be a sweet person, you know. she's gothic, you know, and her blue garments unloose small bats' knowls. So basically, even her at her most light-hearted, like Kay and Marie, who I've mentioned, you know, like when they're being at their happiest, they're unloosing small bats and owls, you know, which isn't really sweet like Mary. And how I would like to believe in tenderness, right? They can't trust anyone because they're not trustworthy. And people aren't sensitive enough towards one another. And we aren't truly moral. As I said, you're better off being with a hypersensitive hypocrite who's a homicidal psychopath for a while. Especially paranoid ones who are schizophrenic. Yellow River. Because you can hone how you should be, even in a world damned and doomed by a giant series of radiation disasters, because, you know, there are pyramids under the ground that want to resurface. The face of the effigy, gentled by candles, so it's just an effigy, and it's gentled by candles, you know, and she would love it to be real, but she's still projecting the moon as more real, and as a mother, and bending on me in particular, its mild eyes. Yeah, so that's what she wants, you know. But she used the word "it's," and then when she says "I've fallen a long way," I think that's what hit home to McCallum and why she cried. And she says clouds are flowering. At least there's some flowers there, you know, somewhere for her. Blue again, and mystical over the face of the stars. So there's other faces there that she can see, hopefully, beyond, you know, the focus of these miniature hypocrites, as she would like to see them. Inside the church, the saints, this is her slagging off the people, the saints will all be blue, you know.